name is Anthony. I'm 33, and this happened last year in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm saying it now because I am not sleeping right, and I need to get this out before it eats the rest of my life. Back then, I was renting the upstairs unit of a split house. 2 bedrooms, old wood floors, the kind that pop when the heat kicks on. I worked late shifts at a parts warehouse, not heavy work, but it messed with my hours. I'd get home around midnight, eat, shower, scroll my phone, and try to sleep with a box fan running and a small desk fan pointed at me. It wasn't perfect, but it was what I could afford. I kept to myself. I paid on time. I didn't throw parties. It should have been simple. The first thing was the waking up not moving thing. It came out of nowhere. I'd snap awake, and I'd know something was off before I even opened my eyes. My chest felt pinned like a weight pressing straight down, not crushing, just holding. My throat would lock. I'd try to pull in air and it would catch up high, like I was breathing through a straw. And I couldn't move my arms or legs, not even a twitch. I thought maybe I'd rolled onto a nerve or something. It's stupid, but my first thought was that my arm had fallen asleep and somehow taken my whole body with it. I kept the room dark except for the router in the living room, throwing a little red blink through the doorway and the digital clock glow by the TV. At those moments, I'd think I was opening my eyes. I couldn't tell if I actually was. I saw the ceiling fan blades as darker shapes against the ceiling. I heard the box fan. I heard the fridge click, and I saw it, something in the corner by the closet doors. A tall shape, wrong proportions, like the arms were too long and the head was a little too high. It wasn't moving like a person. It looked like it was sliding, the head tilted. I remember trying to say, "Hey," and getting nothing, not even a breath sound. The shape drifted toward the foot of the bed and then up, like it was partway on the wall. Then everything snapped loose. I sat up hard, sucked in air, heart racing. The corner was empty. The closet doors were shut. The router blinked. The fan moved. Normal speed, nothing else. I told myself I knew what it was. Sleep paralysis. I'd heard podcasts talk about it. Waking up, can't move, shadow person, old hag, all that. It's a brain glitch when you come out of REM, that's what they say. I did what people say to do. I changed my sleep schedule. I cut out caffeine after noon. I moved my phone charger to the kitchen so I wouldn't scroll in bed. I even tried sleeping with the TV off completely and the bedroom door closed so the router light wouldn't a T flicker in. It kept happening. Some nights it was just the weight and the stuck voice. Some nights there was that corner thing, not always the same height, sometimes stretched wider, like shoulders were too far apart. It would sort of smear against the wall as it moved. I know that sounds dramatic. I don't mean it like a special effect. It looked like someone in a black hoodie moving slow but off, like they were too close to the wall and not bending right to get around the dresser. I'd break out of it, jump up, hit the light, and nothing would be there. I started sleeping with a small flashlight on the nightstand. I put a cheap wedge under the bedroom door. I told myself I was being careful, not crazy. Then little things around the apartment started to bug me. The bathroom window, the tiny one that flips out. Twice I found it unlatched in the morning. I don't keep it open at night. I don't. The first time I figured I forgot. The second time I went quiet inside and just stared at it. It's frosted glass. I checked the outside hinge from the fire escape the next day. It looked fine. No pry marks. Nothing. In the kitchen, one of the cabinet doors would be open a crack some mornings. I'm not sloppy like that. I'm not a neat freak, but I close things. It wasn't just once. In the hallway, the motion nightlight by the stairs would be turned to face the wall, like somebody didn't want it to throw light down the hall. I hadn't touched it. I told myself, old buildings shift, doors swing, latches slip. I repeated it out loud. Old hinges, gravity. I bought a couple of those cheap stick-on contact sensors you pair to your phone, one for the front door, one for the back. I bought a second wedge for the bedroom door, the rubber kind you kick under. I put a chair under the knob. It made me feel better for one night. The next time the paralysis came, the shape didn't stay in the corner. It was at the foot of the bed right away. I felt the mattress depress near my feet. Not a dramatic drop, a small shift, like someone put a hand there and leaned. I tried to drag air through my throat. My eyes were open, or I believed they were, and I stared toward my toes. I couldn't make out a face, just black that ate the faint light. And the arms were wrong again, like elbows too far down. It bent at the waist. Something cold brushed my ankle. That was the worst part. It wasn't imaginary. It felt like the back of a knuckle, just a graze. I found my voice at once and let out a sound I didn't recognize. Not a yell, more like a long breath forced through my teeth. Everything snapped and I kicked both legs. The sheet tangled. I hit the lamp. The room flooded with light and there was nothing there. The clock said 3:17. The router blinked in the living room. I sat on the edge of the bed, sweating through my shirt, heart going so fast I had to breathe in counts to get it to slow. 2 nights later, I woke up with my mouth dry, no paralysis, just awake and mad. I grabbed the flashlight and went room to room. I checked under the bed, even though I'm not 12. I opened the closet and pushed the hangers to one side. I checked behind the shower curtain. I checked the back door and the little chain lock I'd added. I checked the fire escape window. I pushed on it to make sure the latch caught. In the morning, there were smudges on the inside of the fire escape window. 3 oval marks about the size of fingertips, like someone had touched the glass from the inside with dusty hands and then wiped it halfway. It was subtle. You had to catch the light right. I put my fingers up next to them, and they didn't match my spread. They were a little narrower. I took a picture. It looked like nothing on the phone. I called the landlord. He's an older guy. He lives 2 streets over. He said all the locks were rekeyed last winter after the previous tenants moved. He said he could come by next week. I asked if anyone else had a key. He said just him. I told him about the window. He told me to get a dowel rod for the channel. I bought one that afternoon and cut it to length and wedged it in. I bought more sensors. 1 for that window, 1 for the bedroom window, 1 for the closet door, as a joke that didn't feel funny after I stuck it on. The next 2 weeks got worse. The paralysis came every 2 or 3 nights, sometimes twice in a night. I started dreading sleep. I'd catch myself trying to doze on the couch with the TV on, like that would help. It didn't. When it hit, I'd feel something leaning over my chest, not on me, just above me. The shape looked different each time, but wrong in the same ways. The arms, the angles, the way it seemed to tilt without shifting weight. I could feel the air moving near my face, like somebody was leaning close and the box fan was blowing around them. During the day, I was useless at work. I kept messing up counts. I was short with people. I stopped talking to my sister on the phone because I didn't want to explain. I was embarrassed. It sounded like I was making it up. I started reading forums about sleep paralysis, about intruders, about carbon monoxide, about mold. I bought a plug-in CO detector and stuck it near the bedroom. I cleaned the AC filter. I pulled the bed away from the wall in case there were spiders or something dumb like that. I talked to a nurse at urgent care. She gave me a pamphlet about sleep hygiene and said if it kept up, I could get a referral. I got desperate and bought a used indoor camera off Marketplace, the kind with an SD card and a phone app. I put it on top of the dresser aimed at the bed. I set it to record on motion with the IR LEDs on. I felt stupid doing it. I didn't tell anyone. I told myself I was going to catch myself thrashing a little and it would make sense. That night I woke up locked in place. My jaw was tight. The corners of the room were too dark. The camera's little red status light was on. I could see it out of the corner of my eye. The shape was there at the side of the bed near the dresser, tall, and one arm was bent in a way that didn't make sense, like the elbow folded the wrong way. It leaned in and I felt the mattress shift next to my hip. I wanted to bite it. That's the thought that hit me. Bite. Like an animal. And then I could move and I swung my arm and hit nothing. I scrambled for the lamp, knocked the flashlight to the floor, got it on. The room was normal. The camera was still aimed right at me. In the morning I pulled the SD card and plugged it into my laptop. I scrubbed through hours of nothing. At 2:41 a.m. there was a motion event. The IR view is grainy, grey. You can see me sleeping on my side. You can see the fan blade moving like a slow grey paddle. Then the picture flickers and there's a shape at the edge of the frame near the door. For 3 seconds, it looks like someone tall with a hood. Then the camera shifts focus, and it's just me and the dresser again. I replayed it maybe 20 times. Each time I wanted to see more details, and there weren't any. It looked like a compression glitch. It looked like nothing, but the timestamp lined up with when I woke up. I took the laptop to the landlord. He watched the clip 3 times, half bent over the screen. He said it was nothing, a bug on the lens, a lighting change. He said people see patterns. He said, "You got to sleep, man." He did offer to swap the deadbolt for a newer one. He said he'd do it Saturday. I didn't want to wait. I went to the hardware store and bought a keyed deadbolt and a heavy strike plate and longer screws. I texted him I was changing it and I'd pay him back. He said okay, but he wanted a copy of the key. I said I'd drop one off. I didn't. I told myself if this was in my head, I was allowed that one line. Saturday morning, I woke up to the smell of cold air. Not a smell, really. That sting in your nose, like when you open a window in winter. The bedroom window was down a ½ inch. I stared at it for a long time, then looked at the dowel in the channel. It was in place. I checked the latch. It was down. Somehow the top sash had slid down just a little. I pushed it back up. I looked at the sensor. It hadn't tripped. Maybe I didn't align it right. I moved it closer to the frame. That night I fell asleep on the mattress with my shoes still on. I woke up flat on my back and knew it was back. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The box fan sounded far away. The air had that cold bite again, like the window was cracked, like December leaking in. I stared into the dark until the corner by the closet looked a little darker, and then it separated and came forward. No sound of steps. It stopped at the foot of the bed. My legs felt a tiny pressure, like someone had put a knee on the blanket to climb up. I could feel the blanket dent. My chest went tight. It leaned over me. The knot face got close enough that if there was breath, I should have felt it. My eyes stung. Something thin brushed my neck like hair or a cord. Then there was a click in the hallway. The motion nightlight had come on. It spilled a wedge of weak light into the doorframe and across the floor. In that light I saw just the edge of a sleeve. Black, a seam near the wrist. My brain grabbed that detail and everything snapped free. I rolled sideways, hit the floor, and crawled to the door hard enough to skin my knee. I kicked the wedge out. The door smacked the wall. The hall was empty. The nightlight glowed. I went to the kitchen and hit the main light and stood there breathing like I'd run sprints. I called the police. I felt stupid doing it, but I did. 2 officers came. They were calm. They walked through, checked windows, looked at the fire escape. No signs of forced entry. The new deadbolt was solid. They told me to keep the cameras, maybe add 1 or 2 more, and if anything else happened to call. They didn't say I was crazy. They didn't say I wasn't. I moved the bedroom into the smaller room that used to be my office. It had 1 window you could lock with a little metal tab that bites into the frame. I added a wooden rod there too. I put the bed with the headboard right under that window so I'd feel any draft. I set the camera up in that room pointed at me. I fell asleep at 4 in the morning and woke up at 7 with that heavy chest feeling and the box fan off. The fan was unplugged. I don't know how. The cord was on the floor next to the outlet. I keep it plugged in, always. I stared at the cord for a long time. Then I plugged it back in and sat on the edge of the bed, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. The camera footage from that night showed nothing. No motion events, no glitches. The timestamp jumped at 3:02 like the system reset, which I know is something cheap cameras do when they lose power for a second. I tested the outlet with a lamp. It was fine. I tested the strip, fine. Maybe I kicked it in my sleep. Maybe the cord was loose. I cradled those maybes like a blanket for the rest of the day. I took a day off work and crawled into the attic hatch in the hallway with a flashlight. The attic wasn't an open space. It was a narrow strip over the hallway. And the small bedroom, just enough to run wires. The insulation was old. You had to step on the joists. I inched forward and shined the light along the rafters. At the far end, there was a flat spot where the insulation looked compressed, like someone had laid there, and a little pile of candy wrappers against a beam. I made a sound in my throat and then hit my head on a nail when I tried to back up too fast. The wrappers were the cheap kind from the convenience store around the corner. I never bought that kind. There was also a water bottle cap. No bottle, just the cap tucked where you'd put it if you didn't want it rolling. I climbed down and put the hatch back and locked the hallway door under it, even though that doesn't make sense. I took pictures and called the landlord. He didn't answer. I texted him the pictures. He didn't text back. I sat on the stairs with the flashlight next to me and listened. I didn't hear anything from the attic. I just sat there. He called that night. He said the previous tenants had a kid who liked to sneak up there. He said he told them not to. He said he'd come by tomorrow with a new latch for the hatch, and he'd bring it up with the downstairs neighbor in case their kid had been messing around. I didn't know the downstairs neighbor had kids. I'd never heard them. The next morning, he came with a metal hasp and a padlock. He put it on while I stood there. He said sorry about all this. I said nothing. After that, the paralysis didn't stop, but the shape stayed by the door. It didn't cross the room. It felt like a line had been drawn. I started sleeping with a flashlight on my chest. I put my keys in my pocket at night, so if I had to run, I'd have them. I ate junk food because I didn't want to cook. I called my sister and lied and said work was fine. I looked up therapists and didn't call any of them. I made excuses about money that weren't real. One night, about a week later, I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand. The camera app was sending me a motion alert from the living room. I was half asleep and mad, and I didn't want to look, but something in my stomach twisted, and I opened it. The IR view showed the living room from a wide angle. The couch, the TV, the doorway to the hall, the faint glow of the router. For 2 seconds, there was a figure in the hall. It was narrow, like someone turned sideways, and the head was too high. Then it wasn't there. The motion alert replayed the clip on a loop. I sat up and I could feel the cold again, even though the bedroom window was shut. The fan shook a little on its stand. I grabbed the flashlight, and the heavy flashlight too, the big one. I stood by the bedroom door and listened. The house creaked in that slow way old houses do, like it's breathing. I counted to 60, and then another 60, and stepped into the hall with the light up. The night light came on. Nothing moved. The living room was empty. The front door was shut. Both locks set. I checked the kitchen. The back door was shut, chain on. I checked the fire escape window, latch down, dowel in place. I walked the route 3 times and then stood in the living room with the big flashlight in both hands and thought about going downstairs to the neighbor to ask if they'd heard anything. It was 2 in the morning. I didn't. I went back to the small bedroom and sat on the floor with my back to the bed until I saw the first grey light through the edges of the blinds. The next afternoon, the landlord texted me, "Stop going in the attic." I stared at it for a full minute before I typed, "I didn't." He wrote, "There's insulation on the hall floor." I went out and looked. There were small bits of old yellow insulation on the hardwood near the hatch, like someone had brushed past. I took a picture and sent it back. He didn't reply. I stood under the hatch and listened. Nothing. I kept looking at the new padlock. It was locked. You could see where the paint had rubbed off the hasp from use. I put my ear to the hall wall and felt stupid and did it anyway. No sound. I bought one more camera. I put it in the hall aimed up at the hatch. I set it to record all night, not just on motion. I also set the bedroom camera to stay on, no motion trigger. That night, nothing. The next night, nothing. The third night, I woke up flat on my back, with that weight on my chest and the cold in my nose, and I thought, not again, not again, and my eyes went to the door. The hall camera status light was on. There was a soft thump above me, not heavy, just a little shift, then a tiny fall of dust from the hatch seam. I saw it in the nightlight's glow, a thin line of dust floating down. It looked like snow in a streetlight for maybe half a second, and then it settled on the floor. My whole body tried to sit up and couldn't. I made this sound in my throat like a cough that never got there. I stared at the door until the motion nightlight clicked off and it was dark again. I don't know how long I waited. It felt like an hour. It could have been 2 minutes. When I could move, I went straight to the hall with the big flashlight in my hand, and I pointed it up, and the hatch looked the same, and the padlock was still set, and there was a small smear near one screw like a fingertip had slid and left oil. I swallowed hard and tasted metal. I don't have a good ending. I wish I did. I called the police again. They came. They stood in my hall and shined their lights at the hatch and took down what I said. One of them went up on the fire escape and checked the attic vent. He said it was screwed in solid. They said if I wanted to press the landlord to replace the front door and frame, they'd de-write something I could show him. I said yes. I changed the locks on the back door too. I added a second metal bar. I taped my keys to my leg at night so I couldn't lose them. I started sleeping with shoes on again. I told my boss I needed a different shift, or I was going to quit. He moved me to mornings for a while. I don't know if it helped. The paralysis slowed down after that. It didn't stop, but it slowed. About a month later, I moved out. I told the landlord I couldn't afford the rent, which wasn't true, and I left my deposit sitting there because I didn't want one more conversation. I rented a room in a newer building across town on a short-term lease with boring white walls and paper-thin doors and the kind of windows that only open 4 inches by design. The first night I slept like the dead. The second night I woke up at 3:12 with that weight on my chest and the sense of something leaning over me, and I stared at the corner until my eyes watered and there was nothing there, and when it let go I sat up and I was crying without sound. I don't cry. I sat there with my hands on my knees and shook and waited for the sun, and that's the part that's been the same since. It's not the episodes themselves, it's the waiting for them. It's the way I start planning my sleep around them. It's how I put my shoes by the door in a straight line and count the steps to the hall twice and check the window latches with my thumb and index finger and say, down out loud each time so I can remember. I still have the clips from the cameras. If you watch them on a phone, they look like nothing. If you watch them on a bigger screen, you can convince yourself you see someone. I go back and forth. I don't know which truth I want. If it was in my head, then all the physical stuff, the window, the cord, the dust, was just me missing details or making mistakes. If it wasn't in my head, then someone knew how to be in my space without leaving marks, and that's worse. When I am tired, I remember the seam on the sleeve near the wrist and the way the mattress dimpled next to my hip, and I know what I felt. When I am rested, I tell myself old buildings shift, and cheap cameras glitch, and people do weird things in their sleep. I keep the light on now, not bright, just a lamp. I keep my phone on the nightstand on airplane mode with the camera app open, like I'm going to grab it and record, even though I never do. I tell myself I'll wake up and swing the phone around and get a clear shot. It's a lie I need. I've started running again after work just to burn off whatever shakes my hands at night. I've cut out caffeine completely. I see the upstairs neighbor across the hall sometimes, and we nod. I haven't told him any of this. I don't want to see his face if he says he has heard footsteps or quiet talking when I am not home. Some nights I still feel it crawl up the bed. Not a full weight, just the sense of it, like a magnet pulling at the thin metal pieces in me. I keep my jaw loose and try to move my toes and stare at the nearest thing I can name. Lamp, wall, door. I try to name the room like I'm proving I'm really there. When it lets go, I sit up slow and I look at the corner, and I swear sometimes the dark there is thicker for a second, like a person who doesn't want to be seen standing very still. And then it's just a shadow and the fan blades are just fan blades. and the router light in the other room blinks the same way it always has, and I lie back down and try not to blink too long. That's all I have. I'm tired. I don't know if this helps. Maybe saying it like this will make it smaller the next time. Maybe it won't. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Ebon for more real horror stories like this. Trust me, there's more out there than you think.